Привет всем! This is the first part of my three-part mini-series about the most hilarious Soviet slapstick comedy that nevertheless features organized crime, cheating at exams, corporal punishment, and even blackface. That definitely calls for some explanation, doesn't it? In that case, like for luck, and let's go. I'm Katya, and this is Soviet Movies Explained. In 1964, Ottepel, Khrushchev Thaw, is almost over. There is an entire chapter about this historical period in my other video. It coincides with the growing theme of Leonid Gaidai, a director who made several successful slapstick comedy shorts. For his next project, Gaidai was offered to make a compilation of 2 novellas, which were later extended to 3 to make it into a full feature film. Released in 1965, it became a countrywide sensation, the most watched film of that year, and the 7th most watched film in the entire USSR history. All 3 novellas are connected through the character of Shurik, a bit awkward and goofy, but otherwise charming student, who represents a brand new type of hero, a distinctive shift from previously prevailing archetype of a model factory worker. By that time, the space race was on its final laps, and everyone's new dream job was to either become a cosmonaut or a spaceship builder. The amount of university students increased tenfold, with technical disciplines being the most fashionable. This is clearly visible even in comparison with the previous film, Walking the Streets of Moscow, which was made just a year earlier and also features young people, but none of them have or aspire to get higher education. Shurik made nerdiness sexy long before the Big Bang Theory and demonstrated how resourcefulness and politeness, combined with high moral standards, overcome all obstacles. Gaidai included many personal stories in his script, so for the main role he subconsciously searched for someone who would look like him. I think we can all agree that he managed to find his near doppelganger in the actor Alexander Demyanenko. They even bleached his hair to complete the transformation and add an extra level of innocence to the character. The dye was crude and aggressive, and poor Demyanenko suffered from chemical blisters throughout the shooting of this movie and its sequel. The movie's full name is Operation Y and Shurik's other adventures, but it's usually shortened to Operatsiya Y. The strange letter and its pronunciation also call for explanations, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to the last novella, and we have enough on our plate today. The film is packed with subtext, and nearly every replica became a catchphrase and ingrained itself into our culture. So today, we focus on one of Shurik's other adventures, namely Naparnik, which officially is translated as partner, although there are plenty other versions, co-worker, workmate, and my personal favorite, work buddy. Tell me which title in your opinion is most fitting. This novella, the only unaltered survivor from the original script, is by popular opinion, mine included, the most funny of the 3. The story is simple. A drunkard Fedya has a squabble with a student, causes a commotion on a bus, and gets sentenced to 15 days of community service to be carried out at a construction site, where he happens to be paired with the same student and plans to exact his revenge on him.
У вас несчастные случаи на стройке были?
Не, пока еще ни одного не было.
Будет.
A wild Tom and Jerry style chase ensues with lots of slapstick. They say that some gags are direct quotes from Buster Keaton movies. I'm not film buff enough to recognize them, but if you can, tell me in the comments. The entire 30-minute novella is hilarious, and though very tempting, I cannot stream all of it here. So let me share the most peculiar aspects that you might otherwise miss. Despite its light tone, the movie is a satire. Thanks to the Ottepel, slight critical jabs became allowed. Not at the entire system, of course, but at some minor problems, which generally went under the common name «перегибы на местах», which roughly translates into local overzealousness. In this case, it was the overindulging of the antisocials. In the film, officials act sternly, but in fact treat their detainees to ice cream, provide them with luxurious meals, and ultimately fail to make them actually do the community service. After a while, it became clear that in this country of workers and peasants, not everyone valued labor as the greatest of all virtues and was ready to toil away for the common good, quite content with the guaranteed minimum pay at the end of each month. The irony was that the slackers couldn't be fired, only chastised, demoted or transferred, but even those measures had their limits.
Работа стоит, а срок идет. Ты не забывай, у тебя учет в рублях, а у меня в сутках.
Under Khrushchev's predecessor, Stalin, their treatment would have been quick and tough. But following the Ottipus' critique of mass repressions, a more humanistic approach was proclaimed. Strays were to be re-educated and reformed by the group effort or the collective and its members' example. Yet this story raises a question of whether, when the humanistic carrot fails to work, a radical stick would be more effective.
Надо, Федя. Надо.
A little show of force, and the war is reformed and promises to be good from now on. One of the good cops in this scenario is the construction site foreman, a very peculiar character.
Благодарю за внимание.
He is a complete opposite of the stereotypical foreman, someone who would be rude, perpetually swearing and arrogant. On the contrary, he is comically polite and enthusiastic, well-versed and fontaneering with statistical quotes and trivia, all habits no doubt acquired while receiving countless government delegations. Some see in him a caricature of Khrushchev, the country head, instigator of the thaw and numerous other reforms, who at the time of film's production was forced into retirement by his peers, them being fed up with his endless ambitious ventures and cadre overhauls. Much like Khrushchev criticized and belittled his predecessor, Stalin, in 1956, in 1964 came his turn to be ridiculed, so perhaps it wasn't a coincidence that the foreman, who is shown to be slightly out of touch with reality, is wearing a traditional Ukrainian shirt, Khrushchev's garment of choice, while a signature British colonial helmet
Пробка. Подарок из Африки.
may hint at the ex-leader's love for official visits to other countries, including the former colonies in Africa, in an attempt to woo them into socialism. The building site where the story is set reflects another hot topic of that period, the countrywide construction boom, yet another of Khrushchev's legacies. In my The Irony of Fate video, there's a chapter on mass construction in the USSR. Khrushchev was the one to initiate it in order to solve the acute housing crisis. And solve it did! By the end of his reign, more than 50 million people, nearly a quarter of USSR's population, moved into private apartments and were ecstatic to finally have a place of their own, with central heating, gas stove, and hot water. But like in a famous joke, where you have quality, speed, and low cost, and you can only pick two, guess what they had chosen? These 5-story apartment houses, nicknamed Khrushchevki after their progenitor, were extremely scaled down and stripped of all excess German housings for workers. They had paper-thin walls with gaping seams, tiny rooms with 2.5-meter high ceilings, and deteriorated quickly. That actually makes the houses in the film, that are built out of bricks, pretty luxurious compared to prefabricated concrete ones. Let's have a look at the Unsavories lineup to check out how the alcoholics, hooligans, and parasites were presented in Soviet satire. Most of them obviously have some difficult relationship with alcohol. This guy wears pajamas, which reveal him to be a probable escapee from a psych ward, where delirium tremens was commonly treated then. This snappy dresser is Stiliaga, a hipster, a member of the ridiculed subculture of rock and roll lovers. He could have been apprehended for fartsa, illegal sale of foreign goods and currency. More on it here. This brute has a crude Sputnik and the slogan, "Want to go to the moon," tattooed on his chest, a wink at the ongoing space race and the above-mentioned obsession with space-related professions. The lineup scene was lifted directly from the director's personal experience. During the war, he first served in reserve and was pretty excited when an officer came to pick troops for the front. When the recruiter read out the list of all possible details, Gaidai wanted to volunteer for all of them. Who wants to go to the cavalry? I do. Infantry? I do. Reconnaissance? I do. And so on. Finally, the officer cut him off. Hold your horses, Gaidai. Wait until I read out the entire list. In the movie, everyone perks up at the mention of assignments at the meat processing factory, a hint that workers at such places could nick the produce and eat their share. Do you recognize the actor who plays the policeman? This is Vladimir Basov. Initially a film director, he debuted as an actor in an episode of Walking Across Moscow, and since then made numerous memorable appearances in Soviet films, portraying predominantly villains and unsympathetic characters, thanks to his distinctive facial features. Although by design, the story takes place in an unspecified generic Soviet city, the geography of the film locations went wild. Due to bad luck and bad weather, the crew had to move from Moscow to Odessa to Yalta, with some winter scenes from the last novella being shot in St. Petersburg. For example, here Shurik jumps out of the window in Moscow and lands into raisin in Odessa. By the way, somewhere during this scene the raisin caught fire, and it was pretty serious. All the actors and the crew and the site's real workers had to join forces to put it out. During lunch break, Shurik's meager meal of bread and kefir, fermented milk akin to buttermilk, is juxtaposed with Fedya's feast that is provided by his detention center. It adds to the irony and unfairness of the bully's treatment compared to the circumstances of an honest but perpetually poor student, who even has to work part-time in order to make ends meet. The point is driven further home by Fedya's mockingly rephrasing the famous socialist motto:
Кто не работает, тот ест.
He who doesn't work shall eat. And if you were ever curious about authentic Soviet cuisine, here is a prime example of a three-course lunch, a typical set at most Soviet canteens, hospitals, schools, and even private homes. The dishes and their levels of quality and edibility varied, of course, but the first course was always soup with several slices of bread for extra satiety, followed by the second course, meat, poultry, or fish garnished with potatoes, noodles, or buckwheat, or rice in more rare cases.
А компот?
Instead of dessert, and also to partially supplement for the ever-present lack of fresh vegetables on the menu, the meal was washed down with compote, watery drink of boiled, dried or frozen fruit and berries. Sometimes the compote was spiked with starch, which turned the liquid into goo, and then it became kisel. It's actually not as bad as it sounds. By the way, Fedya got an upgraded meal. For seconds, there is a skewer of shashlik, a Georgian variety of kebab that was and is extremely popular among Russians as a staple dish at all picnics and barbecue parties. Shashlik was a festive restaurant dish, never served at canteens, because it had pieces of real meat, while the latter preferred minces that were easier to dilute. As for kefir and bread, it is a cheap and filling snack that is still very popular, even I crave it sometimes. So much so that there is an entire rock song about it. So, if you want to get an instant Russian food experience, go get yourself a bottle of kefir, or buttermilk, or even plain yogurt, and a loaf of bread, and sing along. Fedya's taunts during lunch make Shurik finally snap, quite literally. When seething, he rolls up his weapon, a newspaper. You can notice a headline which reads, "Hatred towards fascism." Some movie nerds found the exact issue of this paper. Under such a headline was an interview with Charlie Chaplin, Gaida's great inspiration. This way, he planted not one, but 2 Easter eggs for us to find. I honestly don't know how to approach the next part. There are some scenes that would mortify the modern viewer, like this one. And also this one. I would just say that even in the 60s, the Art Council that reviewed the film prior to its release deemed such imagery problematic and insulting towards the peoples of Central Africa. As I mentioned earlier, Soviet Union actively supported communist parties in all ex-colonies in hopes of creating new socialist satellites and poured tons of money, resources and arms into them. So much so that the automatic rifle AK-47 used to feature on the coat of arms of Burkina Faso and is still present on Mozambique's flag and coat of arms. Apart from that, the committee found equally inadequate the mock shooting at Fedya, who was old enough to be a World War II veteran, and saw political subtext, among other things. In the flogging scenes among Soviet party heads, Fedya was the nickname of Fidel Castro. There were more reprimands, they concerned other two novellas, but this one appeared to be the most problematic. Nevertheless, Gaidai ignored them all and, backed by friends in high places, refused to make any changes. In retaliation, the film was given a lower distribution grade, which meant limited release. But it was such an overwhelming success that people queued for tickets for hours, some of them reselling them illegally. The movie was then given a wide release, but the filmmaker's fee that depended on the film's grade and the box office was never revised. And that concludes the first novella, The Work Bodies, from the Operation Ui movie. Many consider it an ideal gateway film for foreign viewers. Having little dialogue, it is very visual and entertaining. Mosfilm's official YouTube channel even has a special second version of it with built-in subtitles. A link would be in the description. Go watch it and then tell me what you think. Do you find it inappropriate, or outdated, or still highly entertaining, or maybe all of the above? You might even extend your viewing to the next novella, so when we meet here in 1 month's time, and in order not to miss it, don't forget to subscribe and turn all the notifications on. You'll be well prepared for Shurik's other adventure, where he has exams and even falls in love.
Отвечая на первый вопрос 7-го билета. В основу работы синхрофазотрона положен принцип ускорения заряженных частиц магнитным полем.